Right, it's the Indiana Jones of cheese here. Charlie Turnbull. Do. Hello, Jesus. I see that lots of people. Oh, let's get rid of the picture. Get rid of the picture. Charlie T. Here we go. Hello, it's Charlie Turnbull. It's Tuesday night. It's cheese night, and this is Robin Skailes. Hello, Robin.
Hello. Good evening.
Welcome to our infamous Tuesday night cheese program. I am super embarrassed to find that you've never watched Tuesday Night is Cheese Night. You're supposed to be one of the master cheese lovers in the country.
I know I've been missing a lot, but I hope that we can teach everyone a little bit about blue cheese tonight, and we'll certainly have we'll have a fascinating half an hour, I think, ahead of us.
I'm sure we will. You are obviously a master stilton maker. Tell us a little bit about the history of Cropwell Bishop, so that we've got an idea.
Yeah, well, we're a family business. We've been around for about 150 years, so quite a long time. We've been making stilton at Cropwell Bishop for many years, and stilton is one of those cheeses that is protected, and it can only be made in a certain part of the country. So we're in Cropwell Bishop, which is a small village outside of Nottingham, which is the sort of heart of stilton making country.
I've just put up a sign saying that's your village sign there. It's a real place. Everyone thinks that still Cropwell Bishop is a cheese. It's also a place. You can go there.
Yeah, so the dairy is just slap bang in the middle of the village, and the village has sort of grown around us over the last sort of 30 or 40 years. So we're right in the middle of the village, and every day the local community, the locals in the village, they come and buy some of their local cheese. It's great. So stilton can only be made in 3 counties in the UK. So Derbyshire, Leicestershire, and Nottinghamshire. So it can't be made anywhere else in the UK or indeed the world. So it's a unique product to us in the UK. So we're very proud of it.
It's probably, no, I would say definitely the most successful PDO we've got, isn't it? I mean, Britain isn't fat with really good protected food names. And the irony of that is that you, as an organisation, the Stilton Cheesemakers Association, have been protecting it before we took protected food names into the UK. You were getting trademarks and that kind of thing back into the 1930s and 1940s. Is that right?
Yeah. So the Stilton Cheesemakers Association, which is essentially a group of all the Stilton makers at the time, we trademarked the product, or my predecessors did, in 1966. So it's been a protected cheese for a long time, and it was granted PDO, which is the European protected sort of trademark for established food products, in 1996. One of the first ones in the UK to be granted that protection. So yes, you're right. It's one of the most famous protected food products from the UK, and I think without doubt the most famous cheese, because it's exported globally. I mean, you can buy stilton everywhere in the world. I mean, in Japan, China, everywhere. So it is. It's pretty well renowned all across the globe.
And it's that thing, Britain's 2 most famous cheeses are cheddar and Stilton, and they are completely opposite in terms of how they're made. Stilton is a very small group of cheese makers. I think you've got 5 Stilton makers at the moment, or are you back to 6?
We've got 5. We've got 5 only,
and they're all sort of within spitting distance of Melton Mowbray, all of it in that area there. Whereas cheddar is made all over the world. It's gone to the wild, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you can make cheddar in Canada, Australia, wherever you like.
Yeah.
Although there is some protected cheddar that has to be made in a special way, only from the West Country. But cheddar is cheddar, and it can be made anywhere. So, and I suppose it's such a popular cheese that's why it probably can be made everywhere, because and it's a slightly easier cheese to make than Stilton.
A lot easier.
There's much less to go
wrong. And it keeps longer.
Yeah, it's easier to handle. We're very proud of Stilton, and we have to protect it. That's our job as the Stilton Cheesemakers Association. I sort of work very closely with them. Our job is to protect the integrity of Stilton cheese. We don't own the brand of Stilton. What our job is to hand that brand down to the next generation in a way that the next generation can enjoy.
So 101, what is Stilton? Describe it. What makes Stilton Stilton? Why is it not Shropshire Blue? What is Stilton in terms of its uniqueness?
So start with the milk. So the milk has to come from Leicestershire, Derbyshire, and Nottinghamshire. Most of the milk that we use comes from Derbyshire. In fact, all of it comes from Derbyshire. We've got 10 farms up there that supply us with all the fresh milk that goes into the cheese. The milk is special because of the breed of cow and what the cows eat. So the cows graze on grass. That's what we try and encourage. So all across the summer months, the cows have been outside grazing the grass, and that gives us really good milk for making Stilton. So we actually have a milk, and I don't want to get too technical, but the milk is quite low in fat. So the milk is sub 4% fat. So if you're down in the West Country making cheddar, you'd be making cheddar with milk that's maybe 5% fat, a lot higher. So our milk,
but even cheddar has its if you start trying to make cheddar with, I don't know, Jersey milk or something, it goes wrong again. Each cheese has its own little envelope of perfection, isn't it?
That's right. So we can't make Stilton with Jersey milk, or we just simply, it does not work. The cheese would be extremely acid. It would be very crumbly. It would be far too high in fat. So Stilton milk should be low in fat. It comes from the traditional black and white cow, mainly Friesian. 99% of our cows are Friesian. And the protein content is high, about 3.4%, but the fat is about 3.8, 3.9. So that gives us the best ratio of fat and protein for Stilton. And of course, the main ingredient for Stilton, and what Stilton is famous for, is of course the blue mold.
Can I pause you a second? I've got a question from the floor. Who are the 5 cheesemakers?
Okay, so well, Cropwell Bishop, Colson Bassett, Long Clawson Dairy, Tuxford and Tebbit, owned by Arla, Hartington, who are in Derbyshire, and there's a dairy that makes white Stilton called Shire Vale. So
what about?
So there are 5 blue Stilton and 1 purely white Stilton, which I suppose totals 6.
Isn't it? Am I wrong about this? Webster's? Have I made that up?
Yeah, Webster's, I believe, are not making cheese at the moment or any.
Okay. Well, that answers David's second question, which is, go on, show. Oh, where's he gone? Who doesn't make the cut? Webster's is the answer, David, and it's because they're not producing at the moment. Okay, so where were we? The blue that makes blue cheese.
Yeah. So the blue is very important.
Should we have a look at it? Here we are. Right. Now, I have to admit that I didn't have any Cropwell Bishop in my fridge. I don't have any Stilton in my fridge. Is that kind of thing? So I had to go down to Waitrose today, and they obviously haven't stocked up for Christmas. And this was pre-wrapped, but he's looking good. He's only wrapped in cling film. So we've got a darkish blue mold there. And you've got, but I don't know whether it's a camera, but yours is showing a much creamier.
So this is a half Stilton. So
yeah,
obviously, we're talking a much bigger piece, and this is cut from a whole cheese. So it's sort of cut down its equator, so you can see the internals of the cheese, and you can see the sort of the veining, the blue veining through the whole cheese.
Yeah,
which is what we're trying to achieve. Because the blue mold is crucial in maturing the cheese, because Stilton is a mold ripened cheese. We need the blue to ripen the cheese. If there's no blue, we're not going to get any of that nice breakdown, which gives you that soft texture when you eat it. So we need the blue to act on the curd.
I think that's why we misunderstood, is that people think the blue is there to give flavor in itself, like a spice, but actually it does more. It gets into the curd and breaks it from its crumbly texture, which would be more, I don't know, sort of kefili-esque. Am I right about that sort of thing?
Yeah.
And then it breaks down to a smooth texture. So I'm gonna
just to demonstrate that point. I do have a bit of white Stilton here.
Okay.
So this is without the blue. So you can see it's quite an open textured cheese. There's no blue mold in it.
Yeah, I'm seeing what you're seeing.
So that is basically a blue Stilton that we haven't added mold to. It's the same thing. And it's very similar to a Wensleydale.
Yeah,
it's quite
Wensleydale. Okay.
Cheese. It's quite acidic, so it's a bit like a traditional northern crumbly cheese.
Can you break a bit off and just show your fingers, because I want to contrast that to the Stilton that has the blue.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope people.
Crumbly.
Yeah.
Struggling with the old camera here.
Yeah. No, I'm going to give you all the screen. See if that helps. Hang on.
Oh yeah, that's better actually.
Yeah, you see that it's a completely different animal, isn't it? And
yeah,
you can,
no, it's very crumbly. You know, as I say, it's you know, it's like a it's got a similar texture to a Lancashire or a Wensleydale.
Yeah. And if I just do a similar thing with slightly smaller, but come on, you can focus here. It's got a much more pasty texture. On once the blue has, oh, that's a bit better. You can see that. Oh, that's nice there. Yeah, loving that. I'm going to taste that.
Yeah.
So the blue is doing two things. It's giving that piquant flavor, but it's breaking down the mold at the same, breaking down the curd at the same time.
So you know, as I say, Stilton is a mold ripened cheese, a bit like a Camembert or a Brie. They're mold ripened cheeses. We need the mold to act on the curd to ripen the cheese. So it's the mold is absolutely crucial to the whole cheese process. It's if the mold doesn't grow how you want it to grow, then you're not going to have a decent Stilton cheese.
So this is Stilton. It's essentially a crumbly cheese, which is relatively rare in blue cheese terms. Most cheeses are made from a soft cheese make with more water, but you're retaining that structure. And I'm right in saying that that's what gives it that distinctive spider web, or sometimes think of the Rorschach pattern across the cheese as the blue winds its way between the curds.
Yeah, it's also how you pierce the cheese or skewer it. So to encourage the blue to grow in the cheese, we skewer the cheese with needles, which aerates the center of the cheese, and then the air will encourage the blue mold to grow through the cheese. Now, we pierce our cheese or skewer it from the side. Okay, and if we skewered the cheese from the top, you would get a completely different bluing pattern through the cheese. You would get pockets of blue growing through the cheese rather than a sort of veining or marbling effect through the cheese. Okay. So if you look at Gorgonzola as a comparison, you get more pockety looking blue and more arrows of blue through the cheese rather than a sort of pattern. Yeah, because Gorgonzola is pierced from the top, not the side.
I'm struggling to see why that would make a difference. Is it gravity?
I think it's the way the blue, the piercing needles are in through the side. So the blue will then sort of wind its way through the holes that have been made by the needles to the outside. Right. Rather, if you go from the top, it's going to go, the blue is going to want to grow up and down. So because it's sort of moving to the edge or coat of the cheese, when you cut it, you get this veining effect through the cheese rather than a pockety type blue that looks in clumps. I think this is a good reason for all those like me watching who need to be masters of cheese and learn more to find out why horizontal needling has a different pattern to vertical needling. I have seen Stiltons with holes in the top, just a sort of a ring of holes. Yeah, so, not you. Yeah, no, we do that, but they're literally, it's a bit like a carving board. You know, when you put a massive bit of like a leg of lamb on a carving board, and you've got some prongs. It's really just to hold the cheese in place as it's being pierced. Oh, it's not a needle. It's a clamp of some form. Yeah, that's right. It's not designed to pierce the cheese. It's to hold it in place. Oh, that's really annoying. That's one of those moments when I realized I've been wrong for quite a long time when I argue about this. Oh, rats. So they weren't piercings. It's a clamp. Okay. That's right. Yeah. I've got a question here from Alison. Do you pierce them all by hand, or do you have a cunning machine that does it? Yeah, no, we have a machine. We have to have a machine. You could, in the old days, they were pierced by hand. Be very hard to get the consistency of bluing that we need these days from piercing by hand. Although we do make another cheese called Beauval, which is a different style. Right. Let's talk about Beauval, which we pierce by hand.
Yeah, here we go. So we've got this Stilton crumbly cheese. In blue cheese terms, relatively low moisture. Beauvale, often seen as the British Gorgonzola. Is that a fair description?
I suppose it's yeah. I mean, it looks similar to a Gorgonzola. The size is similar. The flavour, I would say, is different. But if you're going to compare it to a European cheese, then yeah, maybe Gorgonzola is the closest you'll get.
Mm-hmm.
But with the ingredients we use for Beauvale are very different to what they would use for Gorgonzola, and also the milk is very different as well.
Okay,
so it is a different taste.
What are the differences?
So for a start, the milk is the same milk we use for Stilton, so it's grass-fed milk. In Italy, and especially in northern Italy, where they produce Gorgonzola, for example, the cows always stay inside, so they never they never graze on a field, and that's why Gorgonzola is a very pale white cheese, because the cows are producing milk. And it doesn't have any of the colouring that the cows would get from grass to feed through to the milk.
That's very nearly my fact of the day. I'm loving that.
It's a good fact, that I quite like. Yeah, it's good. So our cheese has a very creamy colour to it, and that is to do with the colour of the grass that is feeding through to the milk. So the other main difference is the acidity. We actually have quite a low acidity in Beauvale compared to Gorgonzola. So we're looking for the cheese to build up its acidity over quite a long period of time, rather than with Gorgonzola, you would build up your preferred acidity in about 3 or 4 hours. With Beauvale, it takes about 24 hours. So there are a few ingredients.
You were mentioning before this that you inoculate, you bring cultures into the Beauvale.
Yeah. So what we add various dairy cultures to the cheese, and one particular culture is a gas producing culture. So if you when we leave Beauvale overnight, the following morning the cheeses can blow up a little bit, so they bellow out. And gas is being produced within the cheese because of the yeast that we've added to it, and it has a sort of beer aroma to it. So it's very similar sort of fermentation that's going on in the cheese as to brewing a beer, for example.
Okay, so much to understand there. So it's closer to Emmental than it is to Gorgonzola.
Yeah,
is that
well,
what you're saying?
Yeah, the gas will aerate the internals of the cheese and create space, and that space is used for the blue mold to grow into.
But those gases being produced, that's carbon dioxide. That's not oxygen. The blue is going to need oxygen, so you've still got to get oxygen in there somehow.
Yeah. So we do pierce the cheese just like we do with Stilton, but we pierce it from the top rather than from the side. So we get a very different bluing pattern in Beauvale. So I've got a piece here. It's probably slightly bigger than your one.
Okay, let's give you the screen again. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, yeah, it's very distinctive vertical.
It's completely different. Yeah. So you've got clumping blue rather than a sort of veining appearance, and you can see the arrows of blue as well. So the blue mold is following the piercing needle there.
But that clumping is also typical of Gorgonzola. You often get that in Gorgonzola.
You do. So Gorgonzola is pierced so we in a very similar way to Beauvale. It's pierced exactly the same.
Right, so I've got a piece here. I'm going to take the screen off you for a second. Let's give it out, and I want you to talk me through. So I don't want it to fall off. So I've got two distinct textures here, Robin. Come on, you can focus. We've got a sort of a creamy texture and then a moussey texture. So what's going on there? Why have you got two textures in there?
Okay, so yeah, when the blue mold is acting on the curd, you can get different breakdowns in the curd. So you can get a really soft texture, and then it can develop into, as you described, a more moussey type of texture. But it's some of it has got to do with the age as well of the cheese.
So which is the older bit? Is the mousse the older bit, or
so the softer texture, which I think is what you're describing as the mousse, is the older bit, and that will actually develop further if you keep that in the fridge for a bit longer. So that cheese looks quite young to me, so it's probably
okay. So the mousse
at least
is
another. Yeah.
Mousse needs to come on. Mousse needs to come on, because I like it when it gets that paste, that very smooth, buttery kind of texture, and in fact, a slightly buttery like color. And that's when I like the Beauvale best. I think that is just, world class.
Yeah. So you could probably leave it for maybe a week, 10 days in the fridge, and that will develop on further.
Yeah. Other houses might let that happen. That's not happening in this house.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to go looking for a second cheese? Stilton must be 90% of your business. I don't know, is it?
Yeah, right. No, yeah, pretty much. About 85%, 90%. So it's a large proportion of our business. I'll tell you exactly why I wanted to make a soft blue cheese. It's because I love soft blue cheese. I just really like it. I mean, I've always liked, continental soft blue cheeses. We struggle a bit in the UK for soft blue cheese. We don't have that many. So I knew if we could develop one, we could sell it, because a big market for soft blue cheese. We import so much Roquefort, Gorgonzola, Cambozola. I mean, there's like 5,000 tons of this stuff imported from Europe into the UK. And it just strikes me as utter lunacy that we can't make a decent one ourselves, or make enough to at least help
push back the tide a bit.
Exactly. So but it took a long time to develop. I mean, we're quite a small company. My job is very varied, so I do a bit of everything. So trying to focus on developing a new blue cheese as well as doing my day job is quite tricky. Plus, when you're developing a cheese, you make your cheese. You then got to wait 2 months before you know if it's any good.
Well, 2 months is not a long time. Jamie Montgomery keeps saying he's developing a Comte. I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, that's
that could take years.
Yeah, that's going to take.
Yeah.
But you're right. And also, your Beauvale, I don't know, what is it, a 10-kilo cheese, an 8-kilo cheese, something like that?
Yeah, 7.5.
7.5. I mean, that's 70 litres of milk. That's quite a commitment to lay down and get that right over a period of time.
Well, the other problem you have is that when you're developing a cheese like that, you have to make quite a few cheese. So you have to accept you're going to write off quite a lot of cheese, because a lot of it doesn't necessarily turn out how you would expect it to turn out, and that's trial and error. And a lot of cheese making is trial and error, unless you follow a dedicated recipe, copying another cheese. Then it's trial and error. So it took us about 6 years to develop it to the quality that we were happy with. It took a long time.
6 years. That's a hell of a commitment. I mean, that is we're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds then in man hours and milk and the rest.
Not as much as that, but
I bet you it was
a lot of time.
You didn't count it properly. That's a lot of money.
I spent a lot of time on it, but it was the best thing to do, rather than, let's say, ask someone to come and help you develop the cheese. It's better to learn on your own and make your own mistakes, because that's the only way you're going to learn how to make proper cheese.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
When we get problems,
because at the end of the day, you've got boundaries on your cheese making. You can let the milk go this far this way, but you've got to find out where those boundaries are.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't know why you're doing it right.
Well, that's it. You don't know what's gone wrong, and you're dealing with something that isn't in your control. You can't force blue mold to grow. I mean, it grows on its own accord. You have to encourage it to grow. And when the blue mold, let's say, doesn't grow in your cheese, you've got to wonder why. You've got to find out why it doesn't grow. So there are so many issues with cheese making. It's very difficult. And for me, the best thing has always been to learn by your own mistakes, and then you'll learn, hopefully, that when things do go wrong, you'll have a much better idea of how to put them right. Put it that way.
Right, James got a question, and this is very topical. In fact, it brings us on to a bit of Christmas. But Charlie Winnie MO, please can you ask Robin his thoughts on pots of Stilton, how it matures, etc. No problem, James. Right. Oh, look at that! As if you knew the question was coming.
So yeah, with potted Stilton, what we do is we take a cheese like that, and we cut the rind off, we crumble the curds up, and then we literally put it into the pot.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the flavour of potted Stilton does tend to get slightly more mature than let's say a fresh piece of cheese bought from your cheese shop. And we also put a longer use-by date on the pot, so it's you know, it's a great showpiece to have a bit of, you know, to have a pot of Stilton at Christmas and use a spoon to take it out, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, maybe sometimes you can mix some port with it, but it does tend to be more mature, so it just goes a bit further.
So I had pots of Stilton described to me once as the roadkill of Stilton. Is that a bit harsh?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, we do a huge amount of pots for Christmas. We do all the Fortnum and Mason pots,
Mm-hmm.
and they sell extremely well. And actually, they're a great way of getting Stilton around the world.
Yeah, I can imagine.
These things sell to tourists. So actually, it's a great product for tourists.
It's a great sort of souvenir postcard of British cheese.
Yeah.
So
if you're the cheese purist and you know you're looking for you know, a fresh piece of cheese, and you're not really worried about the packaging it comes in, then you'll probably best buy, you know, a nice slice of cheese from your local cheese shop. But the pots, for me, have you know, certainly a place on the Stilton
Mm-hmm.
map, definitely. I mean,
they're very pretty. They're very pretty to look at.
Gift. They're a great gift as well.
And then, you know, Stilton is the British Christmas cheese is up there with turkey and things as the Christmas cheese and sprouts and stuff. Why is that? Why are we fixated on Stilton for Christmas?
Well, I think it stems from a long time ago when Stilton was a seasonal cheese. So Stilton was made in the summer and sold at Christmas. And the reason it was made in the summer was because the best milk came from the summer. Sorry, the best cheese was made with the summer milk when the cows.
Is this to do with what you were saying? You want a low-fat milk?
That's right. So most Stilton was made with summer milk. So and towards the end of the summer, the milk is at its finest for making Stilton. So let's say the back end of August and September and the first bit of October. So the milk from that time is just so good for making Stilton. It's got all the right fat and protein ratios, as we spoke about before, and that made into cheese, and the cheese has, let's say, a 10 to 12 week ripening time. It was then at its best on Christmas. At Christmas,
okay. So it's as simple as that. Yeah. The best Stilton of the year is what you eat in December and January.
So now our cheese is, you know, really getting quite good. It's the best time of year to eat Stilton. And, you know, as the cows come in for the winter, the milk changes. So Stilton can be a bit more difficult to make in January and February. And the flavours, if you eat Stilton regularly, the flavours do change as the seasons change.
Yeah,
but you've really got to be eating it. It's a bit like trying to taste a red wine, one vintage to the next. You've got to be, you know, an expert and drink it or eat it, you know, quite regularly.
All the time.
Yeah.
I was talking to Mary Quick about this, and she describes her cows as going in on Christmas Eve and coming out on Valentine's Day. I think she was exaggerating slightly, but we're talking about 6 weeks in the barns, whereas you're talking December, November, January. Sorry, that's funny order, but November, December, January, February, possibly March as well.
So down where she is, her cows will be out for longer than ours. So up in Derbyshire, where our milk comes from, the season starts later but finishes later. So our cows will come in, back end of October. But we have we stipulate that that our farmers must keep their cows out on grass for at least 150 days a year. So it's you know, it's pretty important that they're out on grass. It really is. It really helps the quality of the cheese.
Right, we're coming to the end, but we cannot have a position on Stilton and, to be honest, Bowbell, without bringing up port. Okay, so port and Stilton are the oldest friends in cheese, so people say, and people have very strong views about whether you should or shouldn't pour port into the cheese. If you've got your personal pot of cheese of Stilton, then you can do what you like with it. But I always thought it kind of could ruin it for other people. Is there a rule?
No, well, so if you take a half Stilton, this is the best size of cheese if you wanted to mess around with port, okay? And what you would do, you just bore a little hole in the middle, and then you could just moisten the cheese. Let's say your cheese has been out for about 5 days around Christmas time. In the old days, they would have just moistened the surface with a splash of port. And I think that's where it came from. And actually, that does make a lot of sense because it does moisten up the cheese. Yeah. If you don't use too much, it's not really going to destroy the cheese. Personally, I prefer to drink the port and eat the cheese. But
yeah, me too.
I'm not too keen on mixing it together. But saying that, there are some really good alternatives now that I would suggest. It doesn't have to be port. You can, a sauterne, a pudding wine is just excellent with Stilton. You don't have to have a port.
Loving that.
Try a pudding wine. It's, it goes really well. And, there's so many, English sparkling wine, I just think it's great with Stilton.
And let's be honest, Stilton's oldest partner in the UK is probably beer.
It would have been in the old days. Yeah. A glass of beer and a chunk of Stilton.
I might, say that, but I think I'm a traditionalist. Robin, it's been an absolute pleasure. You are a mine of information. You know as much as and more than people can possibly expect. It's been absolutely fantastic talking to you. Are you doing anything in this Christmas, or is it just knuckling down and getting through? Because it must be the most difficult part of the year for you.
Yeah, for us, it's just getting through Christmas. If we get to Christmas Eve and we're still alive, that's a good result. It's a pretty hectic time of year, so that's the aim. Yeah.
Well, absolutely best of luck. Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure.
It's been amazing. I will say goodbye to you. So everyone on Tuesday night, thank you very much, Robin.
Thank you.
Right. I have to say, what an interesting and fantastic man he is. So much we've learned there, and it is one of the great cheeses of the UK. And it's good to hear all those interesting facts about the molds and the use of gas-producing microorganisms to get that Beauvale to loving that. Right now, just need to know that the first Academy of Cheese Level 2 online starts tomorrow. It's fully booked, but we have that for next year as well. So get onto the website and book that. We've got Level 1 courses, one Level 1 course for the Academy, I believe, going on before Christmas. So if you want to give that or do it yourself, but if you want to give it as a gift, then we've got lots of courses for the new year. Apart from that, keep eating your cheese, keep having a good time, and it's been a pleasure. We will see you next week when we've got Wendy from Peter's Yard, one of my absolute favorite biscuits, really good snap to go with the cheese, goes beautifully in Gorgonzola and Beauvale. So hopefully we will see you for next week to talk more cheese. Bye now.